I was able to get Doom 2 running on the John Deere tractor, and yeah, it made world news, obviously, because it's hilarious.
Hi, and welcome to Cyber Reason's Malicious Life BSides. I'm Ran Levy. I must admit that I know next to nothing about farming. As a kid who grew up in cities for all of my life, if I had to grow my own food, I'd probably starve to death. I mean, I don't even know how to plant a cow to get milk. It's all kind of fuzzy for me. But in recent years, even I have heard the name John Deere quite a few times, and not in a good context, unfortunately. John Deere, for those of you who haven't followed agricultural news for the last 185 years, give or take, is the brand name of an American corporation called Deere and Company, which since 1835 has been manufacturing agricultural machinery such as tractors, tillers, drapers, and other machines that I know nothing about, and which somehow makes it so that food grows out from the ground. Like many similar companies, John Deere also tries to adapt itself to the challenges of the 21st century by integrating more and more advanced technology into its products. Unfortunately, it seems that they're not very good at it. John Deere made the news in recent years when it became known that their software licensing policy actually forbids farmers from fixing their own tractors. Only John Deere's technicians are allowed to do that, for a hefty fee, of course. This policy enraged many farmers and digital rights activists and sparked a new public debate concerning the right to repair. Another outcome of this problematic policy is that some Ukrainian farmers have come up with a pirated version of John Deere's tractor software that allows them to circumvent these restrictions. This rogue software quickly spread around the world, which means that many thousands of machines are now more vulnerable to remote cyber attacks. And the latest bad news to hit John Deere came in the form of a 2021 DEF CON talk by an Australian white hat hacker and independent researcher called Sick Codes, who managed to hack not only into the tractors themselves and run Doom on them, as you've heard in the intro, but also to hack John Deere's Global Operations Center, demonstrating how hackers can easily take over a huge number of farming machines all over the world. Nate Nilsson, our senior producer, spoke with Sick Codes about how he hacked the entire American food supply chain over the course of only 3 months. Enjoy the interview.
So we're going to be talking about hacking tractors, which is something that I'm not sure how many people who listen to our show knew such a thing could exist. So since when are tractors even like a cyber entity, a threat surface?
Yeah, so tractors themselves, I mean, they're pretty, like just like cars and things like that, or mining and trucks and those type of industries, aviation. So they're pretty static, items. But then again, typical, Moore's Law fashion or whatever you want to call it, they ended up becoming smart devices. So tractors in the last few years have been undergoing some sort of arms race. That's the way I described it last year's DEF CON. Basically, they're just adding all the telemetry that you see and every other thing that you own. They want to know. But farming is a little bit different because you want to know soil temperature, that's a really random one actually. Soil quality, air quality, engine speeds, things like that. And also, wheel pressure, tire pressure, whatever. Even they've got cameras in the back of the combine where they can actually see the crop coming through and actually aggregate data based on what's literally coming in over the auger or the little arm, the boom arm that comes out of the tractor or combine. So basically, you just jump in the tractor. You have to do the corners, which is something that John Deere's working on with the AI. But you do all the corners yourself. But then the lines and the rows of when they actually take the crops out, that's all automatic. It's all GPS automated. It's all, radio controlled. It's Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, all that sort of stuff. And you can imagine all the different things that can go wrong with that.
So how did you go about first exploiting a John Deere tractor, or just unpacking what was in there?
Yeah, so like, most great stories, I went to eBay and picked up some stuff on eBay, got some Italian guy to send me, well, I paid for it. I got him to send me his device. So it came in secondhand, all of his data was still on it, so it was great. So I could, didn't have to generate data out of nothing. I could see his farm. He's obviously expecting me to, it's not a big deal. Like, I'm not going to use his data or anything, but just like there was dummy data in there realistically. And, I'm able to inspect the device, open it up, tinker with it, play with it. And that's exactly what I did. And I was able to get quite far into the OS.
Yeah, what kind of OS and what kind of software is it running?
So they run Wind River Linux, which is it's pretty much a defense distribution of Red Hat. So it's the same Linux that you'll find in FA-18s, I think it's F-18s, F-22s, F-35s even. So basically, it's just Red Hat-based Linux. You'll find it in even Javelin missiles, actually, I just remembered, and ICBMs. So it's this really core version of Linux that most people don't even know about unless they're in defense or automation or automotive or whatnot.
I'm not sure that there's anything else to say about it, but you're telling me that the same stuff that runs tractors runs intercontinental ballistic missiles and javelins?
Yeah, it's the Linux that goes in the missiles and then doesn't come back because obviously missiles don't return to their destination.
Yeah.
So it's like that.
It's
crazy
just a little
Linux.
strange of an idea.
Yeah, it is. It's funny when you think about it because like you think about it, how do missiles get from one place to the other? They must have something in there. Well, it's Linux, and it is, and it's Wind River Linux, funnily enough. And then you boil it down, it's literally just friggin' Red Hat, and it's rail-based. Sorry, it's rail-based. Yum package manager, everything. It's got the works. U-boot as well. It's like a full-blown Linux distro. Obviously, if the missile doesn't explode, then you've got problems where people can reverse engineer. I wouldn't be the first to put my hand up and go and inspect an undetonated Javelin missile, but that kind of distro is something that would be quite valuable for anyone in the world. So for me, getting it off the John Deere device was pretty cool. I was able to get that, modify it, and make significant changes, which we'll probably talk about.
And there's going to be a certain point where the really, really deep technical details may be too much, but can you bring me through the steps of how you unpack this thing and started to exploit it?
In the easiest way possible. Basically, I took the hard drive out and changed it and put it back in. It's literally all I did in terms of, that's the easiest way to explain it. And then when I say like that, it sounds like I did nothing.
Okay.
Yeah. But it was involved a soldering iron, multiple soldering irons, heat guns, stencils so you can put the paste on there, solder paste. It's fully complicated. That's exactly what I mean. It's just saying, took the hard drive out, put it back on, modified it obviously, and then put it back on. Lots of different tools involved, specialized tools as well, and importantly, tools that didn't exist when the devices were created or manufactured. So things like the manufacturers weren't expecting when they created it, which is obviously very, there's issues involved with that. And there's the other issue involved with that is, tools like Ghidra and IDO and whatnot, being able to reverse engineer software that was released, a couple of years ago, 5 years ago even, and obviously 10 years ago, you can blitz through that sort of stuff. Being able to reverse software that was released, especially on hardware from the past, is quite powerful because most of those devices or whatnot, they weren't actually expected to be able to be reverse engineered when they were created. So, being able to just reverse the stuff, backtrack what they did and pretty much work out exactly what they did, timestamps, all of the stuff they added, artifacts that they left in there, things they weren't expecting people like me, especially people like me, to see.
How old is this technology? Because you're mentioning now that they didn't have what you had in mind when they made this stuff.
Yeah, this is only 2016 stuff, but you can imagine, I think 2016, we're still on kernel 2 or 3 or something like that. If you think about that, we're now at kernel 6, as in Linux kernel. It just seems like that long ago, and it was a long time ago. I wasn't anywhere near what I do today back in 2016. If you think about how long ago it was, and then if you think about the tools that are around now, the amount of tools and or even the word ransomware wasn't even invented practically in 2016. Do you know what I mean? The amount of uptick in attacks and things like that, the battlegrounds change. Yeah, it's probably the best way to put it.
I think that our listeners like to have a sense of the nuts and bolts here. Can you give me an example of one or two of those more specialized tools and how you use them to unpack all this?
So one of the specialized tools that I used was a eMMC card reader. So basically, you can take off the NAND flash, which most manufacturers they don't put them on themselves. They get like Samsung, Micron, who else is there? There's on the Toshiba, SK Hynix. All these guys, all these companies create those flash chips, flash the memory at the PCB factories like Continental or whatnot, and I think it's a Continental board, this one, and they put the flash on there. So the manufacturer never actually does it themselves. So they're on the same playing field as, say, for example, myself. So take off the chips that have got, they're very small chips, they're only like half an inch in size with 16 gigabytes of memory on there, and that's the whole operating system. So if you duplicate the operating system, you can imagine what you can do with that. You can copy it across to another device and then run it on a separate device, which I was able to achieve as well. I didn't actually mention that at DEF CON because it was quite a special event. Didn't want to show all my cards.
Okay.
So I'm able to do stuff that obviously the manufacturer, in this case John Deere, that's something to look at. And I'm not the bad guy, by the way. I'm just like I said, an ethical hacker. It's the first word I use, or white hat, or good faith hacker, I prefer.
Yeah, and we'll get to all of the benefits of the work that you did later in the interview. But firstly, is this the kind of attack that others can pull off? I mean, you've been an ethical hacker for years now. You're very technically adept in the way that I imagine most hackers, would they be able to completely dismantle and know exactly what to do to a tractor? It just sounds kind of complex to me.
It's not crazy work. What I did, it's practically, like I said, it's just taking the hard drive out and putting it in, like taking an SD card out of your phone, except this SD card's stuck to the board, and you got to know what you're doing and things like that. You can burn the chip in half, literally. The hardest thing, I think, the whole thing was I didn't have a roadmap. So, no one else was telling me this, that, how to get into it. And a lot of people actually gave me wrong ideas of how to do things. And I thought, like I do with most hacking, is just, going blind. And I think that's the best way to do stuff, is like, it's like getting two different pen tests. If the two pen test companies talk to each other, are they the same test? You know what I mean? If they're the same squad, yeah. So I like to go in completely blind and then go back over research that people have done in the field. And in this case, there was not much.
If I recall correctly, and you'll correct me if I'm wrong, at one point in my research, these articles were talking about how you can, by virtue of how John Deere builds the tractors, they give themselves remote access in order to do like maintenance on these machines. Is it just that these tractors, weren't so cyber secure that you got in, or was it by virtue of how John Deere is designing their tractors that you could manipulate their own maintenance to your ends?
Yeah, so regardless of what they do, I have the ability to do what I do. Like they think that they're on, cloud nine, and they can just create this, whatnot, and listen to the manufacturer, listen to the OEMs above them. I've been to a couple of conferences lately since DEF CON, and, including car manufacturing and things like that. And I've heard different topics and ideas from leading industry experts. And some of the stuff, obviously I agree with, and some of the stuff is like, oh, that's kind of odd, the ability to leave JTAG in there, the ability to leave UART in there, or, SPI and I2C, all these different communication protocols, elevation, like lots of different ways that you can access device. And no matter what they do, like I said, I'll be able to get in there. Like if they can run it at runtime, I can get in it. It's pretty easy. Yeah. Regardless of how sophisticated the attack is, given enough time, and as John Deere said in their statements, they just copy pasted the same statement to everyone, which was C codes demonstrated, persistent, advanced, invasive threat.
What were you in the end able to achieve?
I decided that I would call it a jailbreak, because I was able to defeat John Deere's jail. Install my own software, achieve things that farmers previously were considering as theoretically impossible. Obviously, the first app that I put on there was the meme, the game Doom, which is the 1993, 1994 back-to-back game, Doom, special game. Everyone knows it. Well, most people know it. They know the sounds, they know the images, they know, they recognize it from a distance. And when people put Doom on there, as you know, it practically is the way of telling the public or anyone else that this product has been hacked, or it's been Turing completely, it's Turing complete in terms of what you're able to do with it. Because obviously I can install whatever I want now. If I can install Doom, I can install Crysis. No, I'm joking, but I can install YouTube, Chrome,
I understand.
Malware, for example, lots of different things.
Did you get like a working version of Doom onto a tractor screen that you could then use the tractor controls to play?
I did. I was able to get Doom. Yeah, I was able to get Doom 2 running on the John Deere tractor, and yeah, it made world news obviously because it's hilarious and it's also quite concerning, but it's also liberating as well.
Is that why you did it? Like, what was your motive here? What did you hope would come out of all of this?
I put the information or the report or the presentation out there so that people who think they know people know what's possible, including John Deere as well, obviously, and DHS and and the enemy and all that stuff. So lots of different people know what the capabilities are now, and that information alone is probably enough to square someone up to actually have a crack themselves to get involved. And that's all I did. I didn't like. I published a lot of slides. I showed exactly how I did it, but I didn't really show any major vulnerabilities. I just showed this is what I did. And if someone else wants to take that to the next level, obviously they can.
The best strategy for organizations to avoid becoming a victim of ransomware is to prevent the attack from being successful in the first place. Cybereason remains undefeated in the fight against ransomware because it moved beyond alerting to deliver an operation-centric approach that detects and prevents ransomware attacks at the earliest stages of initial ingress and lateral movement. The Cybereason predictive response capability disrupts ransomware attacks prior to data exfiltration and long before the ransomware payload can be delivered. Visit cybereason.com to learn more about predictive ransomware protection and how your organization can realize both increased efficiency and efficacy through an operation-centric approach to security operations.
Were there any other ways that you cracked John Deere in the past that we haven't yet gotten to?
Yeah, so the previous year with a team of researchers, we actually breached their mainframe. So we got into their, Pega Systems account, looking at tokens and whatnot. We got into their equipment booking systems, so you could download that, injecting databases, all this sort of stuff. Cool stuff, like proper web hacking. And I think recently, actually, another group of researchers, I think it was spearheaded by Sam Curry, they actually hacked Deere to the core again. So they've done a big top HackerOne hackers, absolutely wrecked John Deere again, I think recently, and they're actually working to disclose that one. So,
and how has John Deere responded to being completely and utterly dismantled by yourself and then these other researchers?
I was actually recently in Iowa. I was in John Deere home turf recently. It took me 5 airplanes to get there, believe it or not. And I went to I went to CornCon and, presented in front of them. We had a chat and stuff, and they're on the right mission. They're coming around to the idea that, ethical hackers are good people.
Was there any resistance when you first published this research, or were they very cooperative the whole time?
Well, at the start, they didn't have a proper team to liaise with. I think I emailed API support to Deere or something like that, and it's fun and games for about a month, and then I got CISA involved, DHS, whatnot, and they helped us coordinate with them, and they actually took the lead for a bit and tried to make it, because they also didn't know how connected ag was, and they didn't have an ag team and things like that. There's no ag ISAC yet. The ability of John Deere at the time, they were scaling it up, they were getting ready for their bug bounty program, but I just practically expedited all that.
Yeah, so I think what I'm gathering here is that most people don't think about this much in a cybersecurity context, so the company doesn't think about it much because they don't have to, because it's not in their profit margin, and so you come in and it's sort of a cakewalk for all these reasons?
Yeah, so it's not just necessarily in their profit ideas, it's also in their mission. Like, if they haven't had an event such as Colonial Pipeline, JBS, and I think the other one was AGCO got ransomware, if they haven't had an event like that, then there wouldn't be the incentive to actually, update, cost money. So like exactly what you said, what's the point, unless someone's actually attacking us?
And now obviously installing Doom on a tractor is kind of a fun thing and a way to bring awareness, but let's really spell this out here. So if you can install any of your own apps onto a tractor, what theoretically could you do if you had worse intentions? Well, I mean, the tractor, there's this trend of cars and tractors moving away from the CAN bus and moving everything on. The CAN bus is the controller network for the car,
that, you know, the lights, the dimmers, or the indicators, or you guys call them turn signals, I think. So all of that stuff runs on CAN bus. Newer cars runs on automotive Ethernet, higher bandwidth and stuff. So a lot of the compute is done in the infotainment system in your car, which is the screen you're tapping on. And in the tractor, same thing. It's in this display. So you can actually do a lot with that display. Like, you can do everything, practically everything. You can send CAN messages out, you can read CAN messages, stop them, you know, repeat them. So theoretically, you can run the tractor, as in you can turn it off, turn it on, make it go faster, make it go too fast, you know, make it crash into things. You can see the cameras in the vehicle, play with the aircon.
What motive would a hacker have in the first place to target a farmer of all the things they could possibly target in the world?
I think the biggest one's obviously ransomware. And, you know, as your company knows, the ransomware landscape is very fluid, active, and, you know, not being able to, and farmers have got money, they've got insurance, they've got all that sort of stuff. So it's a rife industry for people to attack, because, you know, ICS is very, very critical, and the attackers or the threat actors, they know that it's probably one of the most lucrative things to hack, because if you hack something that people rely on, then they're going to spend money to get it unscrewed up. So yeah, ransomware, you know, sabotage, I guess, you know, espionage, stealing farm data from people, you know, competitors hacking each other, you know, stealing trade secrets, lots of different attacks that you can imagine and translate across other industries as well.
Yeah, and I imagine if you could stop agriculture, then that's just about the worst kind of consequence of any kind of attack that I could imagine.
If it's not there, the world pretty much stops. You know, there's no energy, there's no production, there's no nothing, you know. So you can imagine the risks that are involved with being able to, you know, systematically destroy parts of the food chain by, you know, disabling devices, DDoS in farming, you know, denying service to a tractor or a combine or harvester or whatnot during harvest season is a critical issue. If there's no tractors, there's no food. There's nothing in the supermarket. There's some quote, what is it? We're 3 meals away from World War III. Is that the one? So you can imagine what happens if nobody's fed. I mean, during the pandemic, we saw examples of that with, you know, some places, for example, ran out of items during the pandemic, and people went bananas. So yeah, it's indicative of what can happen if things go wrong.
And I think some of the subtext, just by virtue of when we're talking about this, may be what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. What is the worst damage you could imagine hackers doing to a farmer or food supply, in theory, if they were sophisticated enough to do this at a broad scale?
If you think about what I did at the DEF CON, I actually jailbroke the tractor. So, I mean, the worst thing, if you think about it from a different angle, would be stolen tractors can be refurbished, because you can just jailbreak them and get back into them. Another one is, you know, disabling tractors from working in certain areas. You know, I think they've got problems with, you know, data reception and things like that at the moment, power as well. So, you know, fuel, whatnot, grain theft, storage, etc. There's a lot of different issues that I could see happening, and there has been comments in the past, definitely, about, you know, the theft of grain bins with tons and tons of wheat, barley, you know, things like that, and that's valuable, critical resources for countries. And being able to deny a country or a region, even a region, from food, regardless of which side of the spectrum, it's obviously damaging to the people that live there. So yeah, there's definitely follow-on effects from attacks on agriculture for sure. You know, as if turning off power, turning off food would be exactly the same sort of preposition. Oh my God. Oh my God. TK music.